big, expensive wines. Big. Knock me out. Sit down, taste the wine. What do you think? Awesome. Thanks for coming.
The liquid culture.
I gotta tell you guys, I'm struggling right now. It's spring here in Texas. Nice 80 degrees outside. Just put down 3-4 pounds of crawfish, sausage, corn. A nap sounds really nice right now, but you know, gotta give you guys what you want. Need to get a video out today. Have a espresso and a cigar afterwards. It should be fine. Power through it. So don't worry about it. You know I'm gonna bring the heat. Rules are rules. Wore the rust color shirt today to keep if I got any splatter, crawfish splatter, we'd be good to go. But yeah, we'll get through it. We'll get through it, guys. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. Welcome to the liquid culture. Another episode today. Little science experiment, little 8th grade science experiment today. We have a couple of bottles here in front of me and in front of you. As you'll notice, we've got a couple of constants, a couple of variables, a couple of differences in the situation here, and got a hypothesis, and we'll draw a conclusion. So let's get into it. What I wanted to do for you guys today was something kind of fun. Picked a grape in a region that probably everybody's familiar with, Napa Valley, Cabernet Sauvignon. I had a couple bottles on hand that I thought would be cool to put back to back, head to head, in a little Tyson Holyfield action going on here. Who knows if there'll be a clear-cut winner? Might have a split decision. We'll see. But what I thought was going to be fun about this was we're going to do one Cabernet, same vintage, that's another one of our constants, 2013 Napa Valley Cabernet from Palmaz, 2013 Napa Valley Cabernet from Mathiasen. Two on the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of their production, same grape, same vintage, same region. Let's talk about it. So first thing I want to talk about is what did I do with these guys. So based off of what I know about the producer, what I know about the style of wine, I did a little bit of something different with the prep process. So pop the corks on both of them. For the Palmaz, went into the Sirius decanter here, the big guy, went into the Sirius decanter and let it sit in that for about 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and then drop the funnel back into the bottle. I like to pour them out of the bottle so y'all can see the label and stuff like that, with a little filter on it. It had some serious sediment whenever I opened her up. You probably can't see that, but had some serious sediment on the cork, so I wanted to make sure to filter some of that stuff out. On the Mathiasen, a little bit different. Dropped it in the aerating decanter, so this is kind of more for just getting some air to the wine, not necessarily setting it for a long period of time. So aerated it through the decanter, let it sit in there about 30 minutes, and then aerated it back through into the bottle. And so a little bit of a different setup there, but based off what I know about these wines, I think that that's going to allow them to open up properly and drink at about the same rate, I guess you would say. So let's talk about a little bit about the first wine that we're going to taste. So Palmaz. If you are unfamiliar with Palmaz, it is quite a spectacular winery visit. If you're ever in Napa, I would highly recommend checking them out. I'm going to give a lot more detail in the write-up on the site, but Palmaz is a winery that, I'll just say this, you can tell there's a lot of money put into the winery facility. Everything's gravity fed, there's a lot of technology going on with the winery. The vineyards are very pristinely manicured, and they make big, expensive wine. So Palmaz Cabernet It's $160 a bottle. Actually, this bottle was $160 a bottle when I purchased it at the vineyard or at the winery. Now it is on their website for like $250. So was a nice investment, I guess. 95% Cabernet. It is blended. What's the rest of the blend? So 95. I mean, that's a pretty predominant amount. 2% Malbec, 2% Cab Franc, and a little bit of Merlot and Petit Verdot. 14.7 on the alcohol. This is a wine that is, it's aged primarily in new oak. So this guy right here is kind of the stereotypical Napa Valley Cab. It's bold. The fruit comes from their estate vineyard, but it is a blend of fruit from various parts of their vineyard, which is nestled in kind of the foothills of Mount George. So some of the grapes are harvested from the foothills, some are at a higher elevation, and they blend those together along with some of the other varietals that go into it. So it doesn't have any sort of specific, neither of these, that's another constant that we have in this experiment with the two, is that neither of them have a vineyard-specific designate or an appellation-specific designate. It's just Napa Valley wine. So wanted to make sure that that was part of the experiment as well, that we're keeping a lot of constants but a little bit of a variable coming in there as well. So like I said, more definitely a new oak, a lot of new oak on this. Let's see, 90% of the wine was aged in new oak for 20 months. So definitely some oak characteristic. It's a nice deep dark color, as you would expect with a Napa Valley Cabernet. Looks like it's got pretty good body here as well. So right off the bat, I mean, the nose is full of almost like dark fruits, cooked fruits even. Very plummy, very jammy, very blackberry. And there's a little of that toasty vanilla, that you would imagine would come from some new oak. It smells very deep. It smells very rich. Yeah, definitely towards that cooked fruit end of the spectrum. If you have underripe fruit on one end, cooked fruit on the other end, almost like jam, this definitely finds its way towards that end of the spectrum, the cooked fruit spectrum. Big. It's a big wine, powerful wine. Acidity is nice. I expected more powerful tannin, which it does have. It has some good tannin on it, but the acidity is there too. So overall, a really well balanced structure. That cooked fruit, blackberries, plums, definitely on the palate, just like on the nose. And the alcohol is prevalent. I would say that you can definitely smell and taste the alcohol. It certainly is there. Not the highest ABV on a Napa Valley wine that I've ever seen, but it's definitely in there. Yeah. You know, for me, so honestly, I've written about it on the site, talked about it. Cabernet is not my favorite grape varietal. I think that a lot of expressions of Cabernet are pretty one-dimensional. You've got this kind of big boldness to them, and a lot of people assume, okay, big, bold, that means that it's a really good wine. In my opinion, the bigger, the bolder they get, it almost seems like the more one-dimensional they become. And you really just pick up dark fruits and the oak, which is pretty much what you're picking up on this. So for those of you out there who like the oak, who like the big, bold, in your face, I want to spend some money and get something that's going to knock me out, I would say that Palmaz definitely, with this particular wine, fits into that category. So if that's your bag, I think that this is definitely a wine for you. Let's see where our competitor stands up. So, Mathiasen. Again, 2013 Napa Valley Cabernet. This is a $60 bottle. It was $60 when I bought it at the winery, and I believe it can still be found for $60 now. So, differences. Let's talk about Mathiasen. I first heard of Mathiasen when I started watching the Somm documentaries, especially Somm 2 was the one in which they had interviewed Steve Mathiasen, the owner and head winemaker, talking about the devastation that he experienced in the 2014 Napa Valley earthquake. And when I saw that story, I wanted to do a little bit more research on him and his wines. I wasn't too familiar with him at the time. When I started looking into it, I started noticing his accolades. Multiple James Beard nominations, San Francisco Chronicle Winemaker of the Year. So very well-regarded winemaker in California. So I wanted to make sure that I visited the winery the next time I was down there. We in fact did. And in stark comparison to Palmaz, you're driving up and it's this beautiful, hilly, big, beautiful, expensive building. Mathiasen, you drive through a subdivision and you pull off onto a dusty road and you park on the side of the dusty road and you kind of start walking in a direction that you kind of think is the right way to go amongst all these kind of vineyards that are overgrown and there are weeds everywhere and there's old farming equipment, and you show up to this old house and out walks Jill Mathiasen with some bottles of wine. You sit down at a picnic table and you taste the wines. And that's that. No big fancy tour, no gadgets, no cave situation with barrels, stacked up everywhere. It's just sit down, taste the wine. What do you think? Awesome. Thanks for coming. And it was, for the trip that we were on, it was quite refreshing. It was very, very different. It was much more akin to tasting wine, say, in like Central Coast, California, or in the state of Texas. It was very, very similar to that. So it was fun. What we also noticed while we were there was that the wines took a different approach than a lot of other Napa Valley wines. They were made in a much more restrained style, very minimalist winemaking techniques, and fruit that's picked earlier, higher acid, lower alcohol, and a lot more interesting things going on the palate, I would say, as opposed to the kind of standard Napa Valley Cabernet. So, what are the other differences on this wine and with Palmaz? So, other than the price and the differences that I've talked to you about with the actual winery themselves, this one is 85% Cabernet. Remember, Palmaz was 95%. This is 85%. The rest is made up with Merlot and Petit Verdot, almost equal amounts. The alcohol, 13.5 on this guy. So remember, 14.7 here, 13.5 here. The other major difference is almost the exact opposite in terms of oak. So whereas this one was 90% new oak, this one is only 20% new oak. Same amount of time age-wise, 20 months. This is only 20% new oak. So the oak characteristic will not be as prominent, in my opinion, or at least what I think, the oak will not be as prominent, which would make a lot of sense. So let's dive in. So right off the bat, on the nose, and the color too, I mean, the color is about the same, I would say. A little bit more faint on the edge, I would say, and slightly less intensity of color, but almost about the same. On the nose, however, it leads more into that red fruit. I mean, not even like you step down from like cooked jammy fruits. You usually just say, okay, black fruits, but this one's even going towards that red fruit category, more like cherries, like red apple skin. and it doesn't have that big punch in your face from the alcohol. I mean, you don't smell the power in this wine like you smell the power in the Palmaz. And certainly no real oak characteristic coming through on the nose either. Let's give it a taste. Yeah, I mean, there's a major difference in the overall palate of these two wines. Honestly, if I were to blind taste this wine, I may not even call it as a Cabernet, especially not a Napa Valley Cabernet. There is some tannin there. It's definitely still, the tannin is still sucking me dry a little bit. But it doesn't have as long of a finish as the Palmaz. It doesn't cling to your palate. It doesn't punch you real hard with anything like the Palmaz does. Really nice acidity. The tannin's high. Maybe even higher than the Palmaz. I don't know. I might need to revisit the Palmaz. Nice grip. Tannin's really gripping my palate here. But the acid is also helping to replenish the saliva. So my mouth is being sucked dry by that tannin, and then the acid's bringing that saliva back, making my mouth water. It's a really nice combo, actually. I think the structure of this Mathiasen wine is really nice, and you don't have any real strong oak covering up any of the fruit characteristic. Now, I would say that, again, for me, Cabernet, especially New World Cabernet, it usually is just a lot of fruit, and then if there's oak, you have the oak. There's not really a whole lot going on, a whole lot more going on other than just the fruit. I'd say a little bit of like a spearmint kind of thing happening. I would say there's definitely a little bit of spearmint going on here in it, in addition to the fruit. But for me, I mean, just right off the bat, without going too deep into them, you know, these wines may evolve over the evening. I mean, it is Friday after all. I will be drinking these tonight at the house. Right, just initially after the small amount of decanting that was done on these guys, the Mathiasen's definitely the clear-cut winner for me. But again, that is more towards my palate. I mean, my palate is something, my palate likes more restrained wines. It likes wines that don't get covered up by too much oak. And something that's as powerful as the Palmaz is not my like jam. That's not my everyday drinker. That's not my wines that I've had like aha moments from or anything like that. Just not my style. Well-made wine, absolutely a well-made wine. At 160, I don't know that it's worth that. I think that they definitely have an incredible process that they go through there. So I could see, based off of that, how Palmaz wines would be in a higher price point. At 160, though, I don't know if I get the value out of it. The Mathiasen at $60 is definitely worth it to me. Again, for my palate. Some of you might go out and pick up this Mathiasen Cabernet at 60 bones and say, man, that's not for me. That's not what I want in my Napa Valley Cab. And that's cool. So if you kind of know that going into it, you know you like the big, bold, powerful stuff, then probably don't go out and spend 60 on the Mathiasen. But if you do like to have your palate challenged a little bit in regard to what you think Napa Valley Cabernet is or should be, I would check this guy out. It's an incredible food pairing wine, and I definitely think it's worth the 60 bones, especially when you think about, so that was another a variable we had here is case count. So on the Palmaz, you have about 3,500 cases produced of this wine. only 1,000 cases of this wine produced. So if you know, there's a lot of things that go into pricing of wine, especially in Napa Valley. You see an array of different prices from, you know, $15 all the way up to $1,500 and much higher. And you start to kind of wonder where some of those discrepancies are coming in. And there certainly are some reasons why a wine would be priced more so than another. And then on top of that, you know, your supply and demand and your brand awareness and all that kind of stuff. But I think $60 for a wine that only 1,000 cases were produced of is a solid price. Yeah, see, with this Palmaz, I'm getting a lot of that oak characteristic, that kind of spice, toasty vanilla thing that you get from the new oak. But it is big. It's a solid wine. It is a solid wine. Yeah, if that's your style and you're willing to pay the $160 for it, I'd pick it up. It's good. That tannin is coming in there now. So I would say that after revisiting the Palmaz, the tannin's about the same with the Mathiasen. So that's fun, right? I think we had a fun little time going back and forth on these two. Some things that were the same, some things that were different, but really interesting to me to look at two 2013 Napa Valley Cabernets that when you try them side by side, they are almost completely different. Some things about them are similar, but in terms of the overall flavor profile and just what they do for you, two wines that are totally different, and I think that's a lot of fun to see. So, all right, guys, I'm gonna go smoke this guy and have an espresso to get back at it. So appreciate you coming by Liquid Culture today. We'll see you guys next time.